Okay, hi students. We're ready for the February Panther Plus lesson for this month, and juniors and seniors will be both working on resumes, and I'm going to give you the whole day during this advisory period to work on your resumes. And I just want to go through these slides real quick and then let you get to work. So some core vocabulary that you need to know is resume, what it is. If you aren't sure, it's a brief summary of your personal, educational, and professional qualifications and experiences. It highlights your skills and abilities and what you can do well and what you have to offer an employer. There's two different types of resumes. There's a chronological resume, and it's used when you have enough work experience to really highlight different types of jobs you've had. Usually, high school students don't have that much work experience, and so you would tend to use the functional resume, which is the next one. And a functional resume highlights your education first and your work experience last. So it's going to list all of your skills and abilities and what position you're going for and why you think you're a good match for that, and then list your education last or your experience last. Um, and then your skills are the ability to do something is what a skill is. And you have several of those listed in your U Science and Zello as you've been doing assignments. And so I will mention this again later, but I really encourage you to go to your U Science and pull out some of those key descriptor words that they are using to describe you and include those in your resume. And then, speaking of keywords, there is something called an ATS or an applicant tracking system. And this is a software that many employers use. And what it does is it will scan the resumes that are submitted by candidates, and it will collect and sort and scan and rank applications based on keywords that it sees. So it will scan your resume for keywords, and usually they're words that are used in a job description. So it is very important when you read a job description for a position you would like to have that you are applying for, that you modify your resume to include those keywords. So you might say something differently than it's originally written on your resume so that that sentence now includes those key terms that are in the job description rather than maybe an alternate way that you wrote that phrase. And so this is really important. Sometimes people are definitely qualified for a position, but they don't even get called in for an interview because they did not use keywords that were included in the job description. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that that's what an ATS is and that a lot of industries and employers use those for sure. I want to pause right here and just mention in January, a group of students went to an open house at the Pipe Fitters Union, and one of the students asked, can't it take like up to 5 years to get a job here?" And she paused and she said, "Yes, that is true, but there's two things that make a big difference in getting hired on right away." And the number one thing she said was, you have to have a good resume. You have to have a well written resume that really presents yourself well and is in a readable format. And the second thing she said was, you have to be able to interview well. You have to be able to sell yourself and represent yourself well and be able to articulate that to the interviewer in order for them to move you up to the top of the list. And so, as you juniors and seniors, you're either looking for jobs now or you'll be looking for career entry in May or June, or you are going to college and maybe looking for a job while you're in college or a trade school, whatever it is. I just want you guys to all have a nice resume that has been developed that you can modify and adapt to whatever your needs might be in the future. Okay, so moving on, this is a quick example of what a chronological resume looks like. You have your name, the desired job title you want, and descriptions of how you can meet the needs of that position, and then any job history you have, And then you would list your education and skilled training. Notice that I separated out Fort Scott credits from Paola High School credits, just so that they see if you do have those, what you should highlight what you have done and what college credits you have earned or certifications. I just threw some items up there to give you an example of different things you could include in your education section. Any professional skills. So sorry. I apologize for my cold voice. Um, any kind of software that you have used while in high school, any kind of activities that you've taken, maybe public speaking, maybe debate, anything like that, where, I took the communication and problem solving, and if you've been in debate, I phrased it as that because that's definitely what you're doing there. If you've been part of a team or part of a club where you maybe were in a team event, you can have team building there. But I also pulled some of these descriptors in the professional skills from my own personal use science. And so you can also use science, pull down the report and see what it says about you. And then any honors and awards or memberships and certifications that you've received. And the difference here is the functional resume. You will see the top is still the same with your name and contact information, and then the desired job title you're going for, and any descriptions of yourself and how you would be a good fit for that role. And then we will lead with education after that rather than experience. And then all of your skills and abilities. Again, I used a lot of keywords from my own personal use science for that skills and abilities section. And then the rest of it would be any volunteer work, any awards and honors, and then your work experience would be listed last. Moving on, there's some things that really matter when you write a resume, and so I want to make sure you're aware of those. Form matters. Resumes need to look orderly. There are some really fancy templates out there with tables and that kind of stuff, but what I'm being told is that when an ATS software scans your resume, sometimes those fancier formats might confuse the system. And so I would use one of the templates that I've given you in Google Classroom and stick to a format that is clean, looks nice, and is orderly. The information you put in there matters. So people and computers who read resumes expect them to include specific information, and so that's part of including keywords from the job description. And then the purpose matters. For a resume to be effective, it needs to demonstrate your knowledge of the position you're applying for. So again, use keywords. Make sure you sell yourself. Make sure you make it clear why you are the best hire for the job. Um, Make sure you put things on your resume that are going to highlight who you are and set yourself apart. So brag about yourself. If you had any positions of responsibility, that's still a job, even if you didn't get paid for it. If you were section leader in band, if you were an officer in a club, um, make sure you highlight those things. And again, use science aptitude results to talk about yourself. Use it to highlight your skills and abilities, and it can help identify action words that you can use to show movement and ability in your resume. And then I mentioned make sure you remember to include any clubs, sports, schools, activities, positions of leadership, any volunteer work. Were you a VBS leader at your church over the summer? So if you go to use science, you can log in using your login. If you struggle with that, just let me know and I'll help you get in. But you would click on welcome back, and then you would click on download aptitudes, which is in the upper right. I have the curved right arrow going there. But on that main screen, after you click welcome back, you can also click on the circle pie with the different colors. So it will hover over each color and it'll tell you key things about your personality and your aptitudes that you can use to include in your resume for skilled descriptors. So, some final tips I want to give you: make sure you're brief and concise. An average resume is 400 to 600 words. Make sure your sentences are easy to read. Proofread, proofread, proofread for spelling and grammar. Use action words to highlight your accomplishments. Use white or off white paper. I don't think scented paper is really a thing anymore, but you definitely don't want to use scented paper. Use words and key phrases from the job description. That's really vital. And then, if you want to know more or want some help about how to write a resume with little or no work experience, I've given some YouTube links in Google Classroom, and you can watch some of those. And then I also added one of the worst resume mistakes to avoid in 2023. So if you're curious about that, you can also watch those videos. So for today, you are going to, well, we already had the lesson and I went through the slides with you. So hopefully your teachers just push play and you've watched this video and then you're ready to move on to the assignment. But you need to choose if you're going to use a chronological resume or a functional resume. Which one are you going to use? You need to decide that first and then use the template that I gave you in Google Classroom. Now, if you already have a resume that you've built for another class, you can use the information from that previous resume, but please move that information over to the template, okay? Do not turn in an old resume. I want it to be in one of those two template formats that I gave you in Google Classroom, okay? Use Science or Zello to help fill in detailed information about yourself. If you have been tracking with Zello throughout the year and been adding any skills or abilities, any work experience, previous history, you can add all of that at that point. Um, check that formatting and spelling before you turn it in and then submit it to Google Classroom when you're complete. Okay, so you have the rest of today in advisory to work on this, and they will be due by the end of the day on Friday, March 3rd.